The smell hit me first, before the heat, before the noise of the water against the hull, before anything else that I can tell you about that night with any kind of clinical accuracy. It was the smell. Burning fiberglass has a specific quality to it that I cannot compare to anything else because nothing else burns quite like it. It's synthetic and sweet and wrong in a way that the nose understands as danger even before the brain is finished processing the information. I had my hand on the throttle. The engine was running. I'd made sure of that before anything else because that's what the training said, and the training was the only reliable thing left in a situation where everything else had stopped being reliable. Engine first, verify the fuel, check the compass. That's what you do. That's what I did. I looked back through the small rear viewport. There were men in the water. I could see their arms. The way arms look when someone is swimming hard and frightened. Not the clean strokes of someone who's doing it by choice, but the desperate, inefficient thrashing of a man whose body has overridden every thought and is just trying to survive. There were 10 of them, maybe 11. In the orange light, it was hard to be precise, and precision was the one thing I needed and the one thing the situation was not going to give me. They were maybe 30 yards out. The fire was maybe 40 yards behind them, and it was moving faster than they were. I pushed the throttle forward. I need to take you back, not because I want to. I have had 22 years to decide whether I want to revisit any of this, and the answer has been consistently no. But because the door and the glass and the men in the water mean nothing without the context of what that platform was, and what those men were, and what it means to spend years of your life in a place where the only thing between you and the bottom of the ocean is engineered steel and human competence. The Meridian Star was a semi-submersible deep-water drilling platform operating in the Gulf of Mexico. 8,000 feet of water below us. The platform itself rose maybe 100 feet above the surface. 12,000 tons of steel, pipe, machinery, and controlled risk, anchored in place by dynamic positioning systems that made constant micro-adjustments to account for current and swell. From a distance, if you ever saw one of those rigs at night from a supply boat coming in, it looks almost beautiful. All those lights blazing against the black water. A little city. A little artificial country with its own rules and its own culture and its own particular way of breaking people in and grinding them down until what was left was something harder and more useful than what had arrived. The smell is the first thing, same as on every rig I ever worked. Crude oil and drilling mud and the particular iron-cold smell of steel that's been sitting in salt air for a long time. You stop noticing it after about 48 hours. It becomes the baseline. It becomes what clean air smells like. The noise is the second thing. Rigs are never quiet, not at any hour. The generators run continuously. The draw works run when they're drilling. The mud pumps cycle. The pipe handling equipment clangs and clatters. There's always something happening somewhere on the structure that is making noise. And when you live in that for enough weeks on end, silence starts to feel like something has gone wrong. Like the absence of noise is itself a warning. We worked 12-hour shifts, days or nights rotating on a 28-day cycle, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. By the end of a tour, you are operating at a particular altitude of exhaustion that I cannot quite describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. It's not sleepy. It's a kind of deep, cellular tiredness that becomes its own state of consciousness. You're competent, you're functional, but you're running on something finer and harder than ordinary wakefulness. What this does, over months and years of working with the same men, is strip away all the surface material, the social performance, the impression management. the version of yourself that you present to the world at large. Down there, you don't have the energy for any of that. What's left is the actual person. And you come to know the actual people around you in a way that very few work relationships ever achieve. Kowalski had been on deep water platforms for 14 years. He was from Galveston, had 2 daughters he talked about with this particular quiet pride that men of a certain generation have when they're proud of something and don't quite know how to say it directly. He'd pull out his phone on slow evenings in the rec room and show you their latest school photographs without comment. Just hand you the phone and wait for you to say something. And whatever you said was enough. Herrera was the driller on our shift. Brazilian. 23 years in the industry, which made him one of the most experienced men on the platform. He had this absolute stillness when something was wrong. Most people, when they sense trouble, get louder, more animated. Ferreira went the opposite direction. He'd go quiet and still in a way that meant everyone else in a 10-foot radius would quiet down too, because they'd learned that his stillness was a kind of instrument. If Ferreira went still, you listened. There were others. There are always others. A platform crew is 30, 40, 50 men sharing the same artificial reality for weeks at a time, and you know all of them at the level of daily proximity that builds its own kind of intimacy, whether you intend it or not. What I'm telling you is that they were not abstractions. They were not background characters in my story. They were specific people with specific names and specific ways of being in the world. And I am going to ask you to hold that fact while I tell you the rest of it. The sound was unlike anything I had experienced in over 2 decades of offshore work. And I say that as a man who has experienced a great deal. I've been on platforms during Category 4 hurricanes when the whole structure was moving in waves that made your inner ear stage a revolt. I've been on platforms during well control incidents that never made the news because they were caught in time. I've heard the sound of steel under stress and gas in a pipe where gas shouldn't be and pressure doing things that pressure isn't supposed to do. None of that prepared me for a blowout. The first thing was the vibration, not a sound you hear, a sensation you feel, in the soles of your feet, in your back teeth, in your sternum. The entire structure beginning to resonate at a frequency that some part of your nervous system recognizes as catastrophically wrong before any conscious thought can form. I was in the drilling control room. I felt it through the chair I was sitting in. I looked at Ferreira, and Ferreira had already gone completely still. Then the sound. If you have never heard a blowout, I don't know how to give it to you accurately. It is what pressure sounds like when it finally wins. An enormous, sustained roar. Not a bang, not an explosion, not at first. A roar. Like a sound that has been waiting behind a wall for years, and the wall has finally given way, and everything that was compressed behind it is now moving at once. It came from below, and it came from everywhere, and it lasted about 3 seconds before the first explosion. The explosion was when the gas hit the ignition source. The platform shook like it had been struck by something. I was thrown against the console. Warning systems that had been active for maybe 8 seconds hit maximum alarm simultaneously. The noise was so complete that it stopped being separable into individual sounds and became a single environmental fact, like weather. I was moving before I'd made a decision to move. That's what the drills are for. 23 years of drills. Your body knows the route to the muster station before your mind is finished processing what's happening. You don't think your way through the first 60 seconds of a platform emergency. You execute. The smoke was the thing I hadn't fully prepared for, even after all those years. They tell you about smoke. They have you do drills in reduced visibility. But the smoke from a rig fire is not like other smoke. It's black. I mean genuinely black, not gray, not dark gray. Black in the way that crude oil burns black. And it has a physical presence. It has weight. It pushes against you. In the corridors between my station and the lifeboat deck, the smoke was so thick in places that I was navigating by feel and by memory. One hand on the handrail, one hand over my face, and the heat was already significant enough that the metal of the handrail was warm through my gloves. I lost count of how many emergency hatches I went through. 4, maybe 5. I remember the sound of the alarm changing as I got closer to the outside. From the muffled, wall-absorbed scream of it inside the structure to the full-throated, open-air wail of it once I hit the deck. And then the heat hit me properly for the first time. The wall of it. Even 50 meters from the main fire, the radiant heat was enough to make you understand what fire means at that scale. Not the fire of a house or a car or anything a person normally encounters. This was industrial fire, petrochemical fire, fire with the weight of the reservoir behind it. I got to the lifeboat station. 3 others were already there. We got the falls rigged and the release mechanisms checked in under 2 minutes, which is almost exactly what the drill time was. And if that seems fast under the circumstances, then you don't understand what years of drilling will do to a human being under pressure. The muscle memory takes over, and the muscle memory is faster than thought. We boarded. I took the helm position. 4 of us in a boat rated for 30. I hit the release. The drop is something that people who've never been on a lifeboat drill don't fully understand. A free-fall lifeboat from a platform that height doesn't lower gently. It drops. That's the design. The idea is to get the boat into the water before the platform kills it on the way down. The boat is angled. The hull is shaped specifically to hit the water and skip rather than plunge, and the impact when you hit the surface is significant. It rattles your teeth. It compresses your spine for about 2 seconds, until the hull rights itself and the motion dampens. You genuinely don't know which way is up. Then we were in the water. I had the engine on before the hull had stopped rocking. Throttle up. Get clear of the platform. That's the immediate priority, and everything else is secondary to that one directive, because a platform blowout can produce secondary explosions, and a secondary explosion at close range will simply end you. I swung us around, and I drove. We got maybe 400 meters out before I throttled back and turned to assess. What I saw was, it takes me a moment, even now, even 22 years later, to organize the visual properly in my memory. The platform was fully involved. That's the phrase they use in incident reports, fully involved. What it means in practice is that the fire had moved beyond any point of containment and was now simply burning everything there was to burn. The drill derrick was still standing, but it was on fire. The main deck was on fire. The accommodation block, I could see it was on fire from the windows, the black smoke coming out of each one like the structure was breathing it. And on the water around the platform base, the oil had reached the surface. I don't know if you have ever seen crude oil burning on open water. I hope you haven't. It moves. That's the thing they don't tell you. Or maybe they do tell you and you don't absorb it properly until you see it. Fire on water moves with the water. It follows the current. It spreads outward from its source, and it does this faster than your eye expects something that large to move. Orange and black, all surface. The sea itself appearing to burn. And in the water between the platform and us, people. I could see them in the orange light. They'd made it off the platform somehow, off the decks, off the structure, into the water. 10 of them, maybe more. Swimming, moving toward us with everything they had. I reached for the radio. Got a partial transmission out. Position, platform name, Mayday. I don't know how much of it went through because I wasn't listening to the response properly. I was watching the water. The oil was moving. You have to understand the geometry of it. I'm not describing this to you as a way of justifying what I did. I've spent 22 years past justification. I'm describing it because precision is the only honesty I have available to me on this subject, and imprecision would be a different kind of lie. The swimmers were approximately 30 yards from the lifeboat. At the pace they were moving, in the state they were in water that was already warmer than it should have been from the heat above, they might have covered that 30 yards in 4 minutes, maybe 5. Some of them faster, some slower. The leading edge of the burning oil slick was approximately 40 to 45 yards from the lifeboat, moving with the current and the wind-driven surface chop, which was putting it toward us at a rate I estimated at faster than the swimmers. Meaningfully faster, not by a small margin. If I waited for the swimmers to reach the boat, a fiberglass hull, which is what most lifeboat hulls are, will begin to lose structural integrity at sustained temperatures around 200 degrees Celsius. Fire on the water surface will exceed that many times over. The hull wouldn't melt instantaneously, but it would deform. It would fail. Not in a way that gives you warning and time to respond. In a way that means the boat stops being a boat while you're still in it. Inside the lifeboat, I had 4 people. In the water, there were 10. The fire would reach the boat before the swimmers did. Those are the numbers. I didn't write them. I didn't choose them. I read them off the surface of the situation the way you'd read a gauge, and the gauge said what it said, and I had to decide what to do with that information. The other 3 in the boat with me were watching the swimmers. One of them, I won't use names here, out of respect for people who are still living with their own versions of this. One of them was saying, "Wait," just saying it on a loop. Wait, wait, they're close, just wait. I didn't say anything. I watched the fire for another 5 seconds, maybe 6. The burning oil closed another yard, maybe 2. And I thought about the people inside the boat. Thought is the wrong word. It wasn't a thought. It was a reading, a factual assessment of the situation. Like Ferreira going still, that kind of stillness. And then the person who'd been saying wait stopped saying it. I think they saw what I saw. The fire closing. The geometry resolving into something that only had one viable outcome. I don't know if they made peace with it. I don't know if I did. You don't have time to make peace with something in the moment it's happening. You make peace with it later, or you don't. And either way, you continue to exist in the world and carry whatever you're carrying. I closed my hand around the throttle. The man nearest to me in the boat put his hand on my arm. Not to stop me. I knew it wasn't to stop me because there was no resistance in it. It was just contact. The kind of contact that means I know and I'm here and I can't make this different, but I'm not going to let you be alone in it. I pushed the throttle forward. The engine note changed. The hull began to move. The bow lifted slightly as the speed built. I did not look back. That's not a statement about courage or cowardice. Looking back would not have changed what was happening, and it would have made me less capable of doing the one thing I still had to do, which was navigate us to a safe distance and keep us alive until rescue arrived. So I kept my eyes forward, and I drove, and the engine noise built around us, and whatever was happening behind us was happening behind us. And the engine noise was loud enough mostly to cover the other sounds. Mostly. We were picked up by a supply vessel 6 hours and 14 minutes later. I know the exact time because it's in the official report. And I've read the official report more times than I can count. Not because I wanted to, because I kept looking for something in it that would tell me something different about the numbers. There's nothing different about the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. 5 survivors from the lifeboat. 3 others were recovered from the water by the supply vessel. They'd found debris to hold on to, had managed to stay ahead of the fire line, had come through it with burns and hypothermia and things that heal, mostly. 8 were not recovered. Of those 8, the report uses language that is careful and professional and designed to convey information without causing unnecessary additional suffering to the families who would eventually read it. I sat on the deck of the supply vessel for a long time before anyone spoke to me. I don't know what I looked like. I know what I felt like, which was nothing in particular. Not relief, not grief, not guilt exactly, though the guilt came later, and it came thorough. Just an absence. Like a gauge that's been reading maximum for so long that when the pressure drops, it takes the instrument a while to catch up to the new reality. The inquiry found that I had followed emergency procedure correctly, that the decision to engage the lifeboat engine was consistent with training protocol and with a reasonable assessment of the risk to vessel integrity. That word again, reasonable. I don't know what reasonable means when you're looking at men in the water who are calling out to you. I know what it means in an inquiry report. Those are different things. I stopped working offshore after that, not immediately. It took about 8 months and 1 more rotation before I understood that I was done. Not because I couldn't do the job. The job was fine. The job I could do. It was the smaller things. Every safety drill. Every lifeboat inspection. Every time I stood at a railing and looked out at the water and saw how it moves, how the surface catches light, how fast things move across it when the conditions are right. The ocean doesn't carry anything. That's what I've come to understand over 22 years of thinking about it. It doesn't hold memories. It doesn't maintain any record of what happened on or in it. The water that was burning that night has been around the world several times since then. It's moved through currents and evaporated and fallen as rain somewhere and moved again. It doesn't know. It doesn't care. It is simply and completely indifferent to everything that has ever happened on its surface. The indifference is the hardest part. Not the guilt, not the faces. And there are faces, I won't pretend there aren't. Faces I see in low light and in the movement of water and in the particular quality of orange light that certain late sunsets produce. Those faces I have made a kind of accommodation with. They are part of what I carry, and I carry them, and that's the arrangement. But the indifference of the water, the fact that the ocean simply continued and continues, that it was doing what it always does that night, and it will be doing what it always does the night I die, and every night in between. It has no category for what happened on its surface, no register for the difference between a normal night and that night. I have enough register for both of us. That's what's left. That's what surviving that kind of thing actually means in the long run, when you strip away everything that people say about it and everything that inquiry reports say about it and everything that time is supposed to do but doesn't quite manage. You have enough register, and you keep it. Because there's no other option that's available to a man who intends to keep getting up in the morning.